Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We won't start until maybe a minute after 2, so see you soon. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll give everyone another minute or so, just because people are probably coming off calls and everything. So can everybody hear me? Can you drop me a message, please, to let me know that you can hear me, if you can, in the chat beneath? No? Oh, okay. The chat's disabled. That's weird. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Okay. Good. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so we'll kick off. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining me today. I'm Electra, CEO and founder of TLB and also 1NDA. And for those of you who don't know, TLB is a legal optimization company, and we work with in-house counsel to help them streamline the way they operate through better process, technology, and also flexible legal support. So before I begin, just a bit of housekeeping. So this webinar will last about 40 minutes, and then I'll spend about 5 minutes at the end talking about TLB and what we do. Stick around if you want to hear more about our services and how we might be able to support you. But obviously, if you're just here for the masterclass, feel free to drop off. Now I know that the Q&A button beneath is disabled. Oh, sorry, the chat function is disabled. The Q&A function is not disabled. So if you've got any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'll try to answer them as I go along. Otherwise, if I don't have time to do that, I'll do that at the end. I always try and answer any questions that you might have. And also, if you have any questions after the masterclass, or you want to book a call with me to talk about any of the things that we've discussed today, this is one of my favorite topics, so please feel free to reach out, because I'd love to chat about it. As always, after this webinar, I will send around the materials. So you'll get the slides, and you'll also get a video. We have had lots of comments from people saying that the slides help them build business cases internally. So we're very happy to share the slides after this. And if you need anything else from us, just let us know. Okay, so it's been a well-established principle over the last few years, I would say, not much longer than that, that in-house lawyers need to be more than legal advisors. In fact, they need to be business enablers. And that means really being able to get under the skin of the business and understanding where the business is going, what its objectives are, and how the legal team is going to help them get there. But unfortunately, in-house counsel currently spend up to 63% of their time on routine contracts that add very little strategic value to the business. There are various reasons for that, but one of the reasons is a mindset. And I used to have this mindset when I was a junior lawyer, and I think it's very common at the more junior spectrum of our profession, but it still happens to be the case. And I'm sure that we've all had negotiations with lawyers who were very point scoring and saw the process as an opportunity to gain as many points as possible. Now, they're not necessarily doing this because they're trying to show us that they're clever. In their mind, they've got an idea that the more points they score, the more they're protecting their business. But we need to have in our minds that that's not our only goal. That's not our only role. Our role isn't just to protect the business. Our role is to help the business grow. And that includes being able to conclude deals quickly and efficiently without going back and forth on points that don't really matter, that you're not really going to ever have a problem with. And you know that because of your experience within the organization. And you're being pragmatic, you're taking a realistic view of the relationship, and the fact that if there is a dispute over this point, this is how we'll probably deal with it. And actually, if I spend ages negotiating on this point, not only am I eroding the relationship, I'm also jeopardizing this deal, because actually deal speed is a commercial advantage, and you're now prohibiting your company from being able to have this. And I'm not saying, just willy-nilly, just accept any point so that you can move quickly through the negotiation. Obviously, we'll talk about this later, but you should have a very clear understanding of what your risk appetite is as an organization, not just as you as a lawyer within the business, but having a very realistic approach to the way that you negotiate your contracts. Winning means getting the deal done as painlessly as possible within acceptable risk parameters for the business. So that's what real winning is. And I think this is something that we don't really get taught. So when we join a new team, or when we start in the profession, we're not told this. So it's a good message to drill into the more junior members in your team, and for us to remind ourselves that actually this is what the objective really is. Now, if you want to set yourself up so that you can halve the time that it takes you to negotiate contracts, because this is really how effective this methodology is that I'll be talking through today, the first thing to understand is that there will be a setup phase. So the setup phase consists of 3 areas. First, it's looking at your templates and trying to figure out whether there are ways for you to gain efficiencies. We speak to lots of organizations that say, we haven't got templates at all. We rely 99% on third-party paper. And that's a missed opportunity, particularly if you're at a certain size. So after a certain size, an organization is expected to have templates. And although you might think that the third party, they've got the templates, they should be sending them over to you, and they know better because that's their product, that's fine, but there are certain things that you might want to consider, such as, for example, a non-disclosure agreement, which one NDA is a great option, a DPA, one DPA is a great option, but you need to have your own template bank, and depending on what you do on a day-to-day basis and the types of agreements that you're signing most frequently, think about what you can create as your own template. And it's not just your template. For example, if you have third-party agreements that you sign and you're always adding specific provisions because of the nature of your business, such as EBA guidelines, for example, what you might think about is creating a template annex and using that annex so that you can just attach it to a third-party contract. I was recently speaking to an international investment bank, and they said that they have this, I really liked this process that they had. They said they'll sign any NDA as long as the other side agrees to also sign an annex to that NDA saying that these things apply and these things don't apply. So think about whether there are things that you're always adding to your third-party agreements because of the nature of your business and whether you can standardize that. And the next is standards. So standards are a great way for you to get onto what's market standard. And then finally, playbooks. So I'll go through each of these in a bit more detail. So templates aren't just something to create. Once you have your templates, there's something to really optimize. So often we'll see agreements that are overly complicated, they're very legalistic, extremely verbose, and very difficult to navigate. And what happens when you present, if you do have your own templates and they're not optimized, when you present this template to the other side, what happens? I mean, what would happen to you if you saw a really horrible agreement? You just go, oh God, I've got to review this agreement. I don't really want to do that because it's going to take me ages. And I'm looking at this and I don't know how the bits fit together within this agreement. And I'm not sure how to navigate it. And actually, as the other side, you don't always know the ins and outs of the transaction. So you're trying to decipher what this is all about, and it's difficult. So when you're creating your user template, and this is just an example of what we created recently for the UNHCR, where they had an agreement and they wanted to optimize it for their partners. Often those partners didn't even have a lawyer. So, the first thing to consider is, who is your audience? If you're B2B and you're always working with another lawyer and you're sending your agreements over to the other side, think about that lawyer and their workload. They're going to be busy. They don't want to review horrible documents. The easier you make it for them, the quicker your negotiation process. We did a project recently for it was a small medium company, an SME, and they have managed to reduce their negotiation cycles by 80% just because we redesigned their contract. Not only did we simplify the language, this is an example of language simplification. So this is the before and this is the after, and the after means exactly the same as the before, but it's just much shorter. Not only do you shorten the negotiation cycle because it's just quicker to navigate the agreement and easier to understand, if you have a simpler agreement, the other side can send it to a more junior member who is probably potentially less busy. They also don't have this psychological barrier that we get where they might say, I'm going to review that a bit later because I can't get into this right now. If you present it in a way that's visually appealing, but also operationally strategic in the way that it's laid out, you are encouraging that person to read that agreement as quickly as possible. And the other thing that you're doing is that you are breeding a feeling of trust, because if your agreement is really easy to understand, I don't know about you, but when I get an agreement that I don't really understand, I think these guys are trying to hide something from me. And then I immediately become hyper vigilant when I'm reviewing that agreement. That's a natural thing that would happen because your defenses are up. So we might think that an agreement is just an agreement, and as long as it protects the parties, that's it. But think about the psychology that sits behind the other person reviewing that agreement and how you're making them feel when they're reviewing that agreement. And ultimately, as with anything, try to encourage the right human behaviors, because that's the way that you're going to get the best out of your counterparty. As I said, embrace standardized templates. These are some templates that you can leverage. So one NDA, one DPA. There are other standards out there like bond terms. The difference between bond terms and common paper and some of the other standards out there is that they're more negotiable because there are areas that you can negotiate, but that might work better for you. One NDA is more like Apple, and bond terms is probably more like Android. So Apple is, take it as it is. We think that this is good enough, but it's nice and simple. Bond terms allows you to negotiate more and to add more provisions to it. So whatever it is that suits your whatever it is that you're doing in the nature of your business and your risk appetite, by using a market standard, you are totally streamlining the way that you negotiate the most frequently negotiated agreements, because we've established a brand around one NDA. And if you send that over to the other side, they will often know about it. So I spoke to someone today and they said that at the beginning, they had to send a guidance note to the other side when they were sending over one NDA, but now it's a well-established market standard. And not only is it likely that the other side will also be on one of these standards, and so you're starting off from a common ground, which was always the vision of one NDA, and ultimately where we want to get to. But even if they've not adopted the standard, they know that it is a standard, that it's balanced, that it's well accepted across the board, and it's a bit silly to negotiate something that is so balanced and widely accepted. So often, more often than not, if the other side is not on the same standard, they will still just accept it. And that's also backed by a lot of research that we've done where we've asked people who have not adopted the standard how they would deal with it. So you can leverage it, it's free, so there's no reason why you wouldn't. And the third is negotiation playbooks. So this is what a playbook might look like. A playbook is effectively a document that outlines your preferred negotiation positions. So you can have a playbook either for your own paper, if you have your own templates, or for third-party paper. And what you can do, and a playbook is a big piece of work. It takes about 40 to 60 hours to do, but it's absolutely worthwhile. It's a week's worth of work for someone, but you will make that time back, and the efficiencies gained are huge. Because what you're doing is you're taking the provisions, we'll take the example of your own paper, the provisions that are in your template, you're setting out the preferred position for that, and then you're setting out the issues that might arise. And you know that because you're negotiating your paper all the time. So if the issue is that you have an auto renewal clause in your SaaS agreement and the other side is pushing back on that, then you could say, this is the position that we want to take if they push back, whether that's negotiable and what the fallback position is. And you could also include some wording so that when your lawyers are reviewing an agreement, they can just copy and paste the wording either to replace that provision or to provide commentary to explain why that provision's there. And I'll get to the importance of commentary a bit later. But by creating a playbook, you are fostering a consistent negotiation process through a standardized approach, because what we often see is that you have a lawyer, you have a team of 10 lawyers, each lawyer might be negotiating slightly differently. The result of that is that you have an inconsistent contractual landscape, which of course increases the risk profile of your business. The other thing is that by creating a playbook, you create clarity on the business risk appetite and the thresholds that are agreed by your business. Otherwise, what happens is you're taking your own risk appetite and you're applying it to a contract that's actually a business tool. It's not a legal tool, it's a business tool, and it affects the business ultimately. So if you've got 10 lawyers and everyone's got slightly different risk appetite, again, you're creating that inconsistency across the board. There's no more reinventing the wheel so that you're gaining efficiencies. For example, I remember when I didn't work with playbooks, I would be reviewing a contract and I'd think, oh God, I remember some really good wording that I drafted the other day. Let me go and find that wording. There's no reason for you to do that anymore because you've already done that work and you front loaded it. And actually you're not the only one who's gaining from that efficiency. The whole team is. So you're just multiplying these efficiencies. And finally, if you're using your playbook correctly, you can monitor and continuously improve the performance of your preferred positions. We build a lot of playbooks for clients and then we maintain them as well for them. And every quarter we'll go to them and say, this provision that you said is non-negotiable actually is negotiable, because we always come to you for an exception approval and you accept it. And so why don't you just change your preferred position? And then that stops that little negotiation cycle that happens every time. And by making these tweaks and looking at the reality of your risk appetite rather than what you thought it would be at the beginning of the process, you are iterating and improving the performance of your whole negotiation process because you're reducing the time it takes to do the things that you're going to accept anyway. So this is your foundation. So once you've set yourself up with your templates, adopting standards if you can, and then doing your playbooks, then you're in a position to start to optimize your negotiation process. And a lot of this is to do with your mindset effectively and the way that you go about your negotiation from the outset. So the first thing that I would say is to try and minimize red lines. It's really tempting sometimes when you've got the perfect wording for a clause that someone's changed, or if you're reviewing a third-party agreement, you might look at a clause and say, oh, I know exactly what kind of wording I'd accept. So I'm just going to wholesale remove this provision and I'm going to replace it with this. Now, what happens to your brain when you see the image on the left? You've got to start thinking, oh God, what have they changed here? How different is it to what I had before? I need to now compare it. This is going to take me a minute. Whereas if you look at the one on the right, you've just chosen bits to change that will enable the other side to quickly do a comparison between what they had and what you've added. So although the two probably have more or less the same effect, the psychological impact that these two have is very different. So don't just think about the short-term gains of it will just be easier and quicker for me to just delete this and replace it with my wording. You might be gaining a few seconds now, but you're going to lose those seconds and minutes and maybe a week if the other side receives it looking like this, particularly if you're taking this approach throughout the whole agreement, it becomes problematic. The other thing that's really important is to provide robust commentary. Now, I think this is just a matter of respect to the other side. The other side have drafted an agreement, you're reviewing it, and you're just deleting stuff and not really explaining why. Now, it's not just a matter of respect, it's also a matter of the way that you're behaving towards the other side with that level of respect. So giving them the explanation that they need will foster the right relationship. So if you do need to get on the phone with them, then at least they know that you've tried your best to explain why you've done what you've done, and you haven't just deleted stuff without giving them context. And it's the lack of context that creates bad attitudes between people, because ultimately that's the thing that really delays things. It's people's approach. And also you're eliciting another round of negotiation if you don't provide the context. Because if someone deletes something, what I would do is put a comment in it in my second round and say, why did you delete this? Can you explain? Because we need it for this reason. And then you have to go back and explain, of course, or you need to get on the phone with them. So it's more efficient and it's more respectful and it fosters better relationships if you front load that effort. So there's a common theme throughout this, which is try to front load the effort as much as possible. So by creating better templates, by creating playbooks, and by doing the groundwork to adopt a standard. And then when you're first reviewing an agreement, taking more time over that first round is absolutely key to you streamlining the way that your negotiations are going to run going forward. So you're front loading the effort, but you're also showing the other side that you are considering them, and that you understand that they're busy, and you understand how their brain works, because they're a lawyer and you're a lawyer, and they're going to have the questions that you're probably going to have. So you're preempting all of that behavior because you're being very user-centric. So I'm talking about more in a B2B scenario, but effectively, you know what they're going to ask or what they're going to question. And you might have situations where the other side doesn't question you so much, but ultimately, if you're showing that respect and if you're showing that front loading of effort, that will really hold you in good stead going forward. Sorry. Okay, now this is the key really to this whole process, and this is the bit that I really want to focus on now. We often think that legal teams should be accountable for all contracts because contracts are legal. They're not legal, they're business, right? The legal team can decipher them. They can liaise with various departments within an organization to get the input that they need so that they can then incorporate that input into a legal document. They can find traps or areas of concern and flag them better than other teams in the organization. But ultimately, the contract is not built for the lawyer, it's built for the teams within the business that are going to administer that commercial relationship. So if you have a process around your negotiation that doesn't just involve legal, or where legal isn't the absolute center of the negotiation process, there's a lot to be gained from a business perspective. And you're probably thinking, I could never make that change, but let's go through this and then we can talk about the change piece at the end. So as I said, a contract is not just a legal document. And this is something that as a legal team, it'd be great if you started investing some time in so that you can train your broader teams to understand this point. Because the effect of a contract, if it goes wrong, won't be on the legal team, it will be on the business. And at that point, everyone's going to be brought in. So you want to be drilling that message into your team. So with every interaction that you have, you need to explain this to them and just repeat until it lands. It creates governance, having a process around your negotiation, who's doing what within a negotiation, and not having this, legal will just do everything and we're going to project manage everything. It's effectively what we end up doing. There's no governance and there's no understanding of who does what. There's no RACI, there's no documented roles and responsibilities. People aren't being measured for their input into the commercial contract negotiation piece, even though they should, because ultimately, as I said, it affects the broader business. It's really difficult to understand who needs to approve and sign off stuff unless you're in a really large organization where this is already well documented. But by having a process, you have increased deal speed and you don't have lots of problems with version control. So what am I talking about? So I'm talking about some new concepts here. So in a traditional environment, as I said, legal isn't just the team that reviews the legal document. It's the team that project manages a negotiation. I'm talking about a larger commercial contract where, say, for example, you're entering into agreement with a partner. You've got a commercial person within the business that wants to do this deal, and they've come to you and they've said, I've got the contract from the other side, please review it. You're reviewing that contract and you are ending up having to liaise with 7 different departments. You've got IT, you've got finance because there's payment terms, you've got InfoSec because there's data stuff going on, and you're just becoming this point of contact. Now, you're a really expensive person to be doing this, firstly. You're also probably not the one with the vested interest in this deal. So that sense of urgency that the commercial person has, you probably won't have it because you're also managing other stuff. And also, you don't have the ins and outs of the commercial negotiations that have happened prior to the contract being sent to you. So question whether you're the right person to be managing this project, because a contract negotiation is a mini project and it should be treated as such. So if you were to create a process for your negotiation within your organization that applied to all commercial negotiations over a certain threshold, because I'm not suggesting that you do this for every single thing, might be too much, but for certain types of negotiations, the ones that take ages and ages, if you were to create a process that included these roles, this would have a huge impact. So you can have a deal owner who has overall accountability for the deal, and they're required to compile and organize the deal team. So that's the broader team that feeds into the deal, as well as keep them updated. And they're also responsible for liaising with the supplier, for example, or the partner. And then you've got the deal team, and the legal team is part of the deal team. So each member is responsible for their area of expertise, and that includes providing all of the information required by the deal owner and the legal team to get the deal over the line. So the idea is, get rid of your responsibility as the project manager, explain that this is what you've been doing. You have been project managing, not lawyering, and therefore consider who a better person could be to own the negotiation process. And that's the person who has the vested interest, who is accountable for the deal overall, who will have to understand the contract and manage it if stuff goes wrong. This is examples that I'm talking about that have nothing to do with legal as such. And legal just becomes this post box, and it can be very frustrating because people aren't even answering. You're like, this isn't even my deal. Deal owner, can you please just do your thing/job and get that person to respond to you? Otherwise, when that deal doesn't go through in time, you're going to blame me, when actually it's your responsibility to make sure that those guys confirm what it is that we're asking. So there's commercial pieces with the agreement. And I know when I'm reviewing the contract, I'm going, right, fees, tag this person. Is this agreed? Is this as per the agreement? And you just end up going through this contract and reviewing the legal terms for half the time. And the other time, you're just posting to different people, asking them to feed into it and asking, has this been agreed? Is this in line with your policy? You've got data and product, for example, they'd have to respond to this stuff. Legal wouldn't know about this at all. Then you've got engineering, for example, or ops. Can we accept this SLA? Is this fine? We've got infosec. Is this fine? Is this okay? This isn't stuff that and you're just spending your time asking people to confirm things when it's not really. Why is legal doing that? So this is an example negotiation process that we built a couple of years ago now, and it's still being used. So this is a process that we built for a client who had a lot of problems getting bigger deals over the line. This was a scale up. They were growing really quickly, and legal, there were only 3 people at the time, were absolutely inundated with managing these big deals. So we did a deep dive to understand what was keeping these guys so busy, and this was it. And we said, right, why are you doing this? There's no need. So from then on, this process was implemented, and it was amazing what impact it had, not only on the time that legal was able to get back so they can focus on more strategic initiatives, which is really where we should be, but deals just got done so much quicker because the commercial people who were responsible for these deals, they had incentives, or the salespeople that were responsible for these deals, they had incentives. So they had that level of that feeling of urgency, and they were getting people to respond to things more quickly. And also, at the end of the day, they knew loads of the answers, so they could answer things really quickly, and that was their main focus. So this is just an example process. So the deal owner gets an NDA in place with the supplier. So again, that's not legal's responsibility, it's the deal owner's responsibility. The deal owner then establishes the deal team. So the deal owner will say, right, I need input from legal, finance, I've got product, etc. So they will establish the deal team, and then they'll populate the deal doc. So we created a deal doc, which I'll show you in a minute. And then the deal team will answer questions and keep the document updated. So everyone's just doing their own little bit. You haven't got legal being this whole big project manager for a deal that they don't really know loads about. Then the deal owner will set up an internal kickoff meeting. And I've had situations in the past where I've gone into negotiations. I don't know if this has happened to you, but I've gone into negotiations with the deal owner, the commercial person, and we're not aligned. And I'm trying to argue a point, or I'm trying to understand something, and the deal owner is thinking about something else, and it's because we didn't have that internal meeting. So it's their responsibility to brief everybody like a project manager would before anything else happens. The other thing that can happen often is that you start reviewing a document and then realize that you don't have the right approvals in place, either for the spend or for the nature of the agreement, or you haven't done any conflict checks. So each team needs to confirm that it approves that this deal should go through in the deal doc. This may not be aligned with your process. And then also, if you're working with a third party, this is a document that we created called supplier engagement, and these are sent to the supplier in a collaborative document. So this is a document that you're asking the supplier to respond to certain questions on. And again, this might not be suitable for you, but we found that there was kind of the internal collation of information that was happening in order for us to complete the review of the document. But then as we were going along, we also had clarification questions that needed to go to the other side. So we thought it'd be better if we just collated all these questions and send those over as points rather than as a red line, because it's just easier. And again, on their side, a lot of this stuff is operational and logistical, it's not legal. So they would have to negotiate. They would have to find the information themselves. And what we also did here is we sent the information over to the other side with a cover page that said, this is how we negotiate our deals. This is going to be super collaborative. We want to do this as quickly and painlessly as possible. And here's how it's going to run. And this is what we expect of you. And the response to that was great, because the other side just felt like we were a team. We're not there to fight against them. We're all working towards the same goal. And so it really streamlined the way that we negotiated. So armed with all the information we needed, you go over to the other side and you negotiate it via email. And the idea is that you don't get on the phone until you absolutely need to, because often you can get stuck into in a battle of personalities, which is not conducive to any great result. So the idea is try to exhaust your email negotiation capability, but don't get to the point where you're just fighting tit for tat. At that point, you do get on the phone. And then if you need a call, you have a key issues list that you deal with. And then finally, once that's all done, you close out the agreement, and then you might have a one-pager to explain what this is about, so the signatory is blindsided by this. So this is just quite a simple process where the main shift here is in the shift of accountability, and that goes to the deal owner, who's the person who is ultimately accountable for this deal, and not to legal. And finally, the final point here is that think about collecting data and iterating on your process, because at the end of the day, you can put loads of processes in place, you can create amazing templates, but if you're not monitoring their performance, as with any product, it's really hard to make things better, and nothing's static, and things change and trends change and the way people interact changes. So you need to make sure that you've got processes in place to collect data and iterate on the way that you work. So for example, if you have a playbook and you're building it in Google Sheets or Excel, by the way, we've got a free sample on our website of a playbook, so feel free to go and download it. There's a tab, you can have a tab there where you collect input from your broader team on the provisions that you're negotiating and the provisions that are causing friction. And then every few months you can review that and you can update your playbook. Equally, if you're using something like a legal front door or another workflow tool, then start to collect data on the time it takes you from the minute a contract hits your desk to when it gets signed, and try to see what those times look like. Are they going up? Are they going down? What are the trends? And then from there, try to put some KPIs together and just look at the data. And I know that it's often hard to even know what data to measure, but you have a lot of data already. And so you want to just start figuring out how you're going to leverage it and how you're going to make the most of it. Okay, I actually finished early there. So if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. As I finish this early, I'd like to talk a bit about change management. And I know that some of you might be looking at that process and thinking, yeah, it would be great if I didn't have to project manage every single negotiation that came through the door, but how am I going to get people to do that? How am I going to get people to take on that additional accountability? And I think that as with anything, as with any change management piece, the first thing you need to do is a stakeholder mapping piece, and start thinking about who it is that you need to influence in order to get this new process implemented. And this goes for any change. If you want to implement one NDA, if you want budget to do a legal design project, if you want a new headcount, you want to think about who it is that you need to influence and what those people care about on the one hand. You know, if you're in finance, you might care about saving money, but also what they fear, both in their roles and also personally. And that might sound a bit deep, but you want to understand that person first. So do a stakeholder mapping. Who do I need to influence? And then think about those people, both in their roles, you know, what are their objectives, and also as individuals and how they behave generally. And then think about what you're going to present to them in order to get them bought in. So you want to tell them about all the benefits of allowing a commercial person or encouraging a commercial person to become your deal owner, but also all the things that would go wrong if they didn't do that, and all the opportunities that they're missing now because they're not doing that. So I know that lots of people talk about build a business case and sell the benefits. The benefits are great, but there's a lot of research that shows that actually playing to people's, talking to people about their fears and how those might materialize more powerful. And yeah, that might sound a bit dark, but it is true. So if you want to get change implemented, then you need to think about that. An example of that is with 1NDA and what we did there. With 1NDA, we really played to people's FOMO, which is why we got lots of law firms involved, and we really showcased the big names and the cool companies that were involved, because we knew that other people would want to get involved as a result. People get FOMO. So that's the fear that we played on, fear of missing out. And that's the thing that really gave us impetus to drive such a change so quickly. So yeah, it might sound a bit Machiavellian, but it is a good way of approaching it. So once you've done your stakeholder mapping, who's who, what's what, so what do they fear, what do they want, then start building your case for each of those people and take your time over it, because these changes are going to transform your legal team. They absolutely will halve the time that you spend negotiating an agreement, if not more, because particularly if you can get rid of the project management piece, then you will be freeing up your team a lot. So start thinking about the business case that you're going to build and focus on getting certain people at leadership level or at very highly influential level bought in to the change that you're about to propose. Get them bought in and then repeat. So build your business case, present it to them, and then follow up, go back again, be persistent. You have to insist to get things done, and you have to repeat. And then once the change is agreed and you're rolling it out, roll it out in the most human-centric way. Think about the people that you need to train. Create training that's interesting and engaging. Talk to them about their benefits that they're going to have. You know, it's a stakeholder management piece. You know, change management is a bit of a broad term. It's a stakeholder management piece. It's about managing people's personalities, managing their fears, managing their desires, understanding people, and being able to navigate human behaviors and encouraging those that you want. So just think about how you're going to approach that. Okay, I've got some questions here. What's the best practice for signing off on a contract that has so much legal and business risk that legal cannot sign off on the contract in good conscience? No contract is perfect, but there are some egregious cases that come across our desk, and I'd like to understand how other companies address the scenario. Depending on whether or not you have a risk management process within your organization, I think you need to raise risks. If you can't sign a contract, you know, if you're not comfortable doing it, then you need to let the person who is ultimately going to be accountable know that, and you need to do it in writing. And I'm not saying be alarmist about it, but write it down. And, you know, if they say, I accept this risk, as a business, I accept this risk, then you accept this risk too. You know, it's not your job to set the risk appetite of the business. It's your job to explain the risks and allow the business to either take or not take the risk. So this is the thing. I think we take on a lot of responsibility for the whole business and its whole risk appetite, but it doesn't just sit with the legal. And this is, you know, also why we need to be explaining that a contract is not just a legal document. Taryn's saying, you mentioned collecting data, for example, time from the minute the contract arrives until it's signed. Are there any other key data points that you found particularly useful amongst your clients? We're actually going to have a whole webinar on data. So Taryn, please, stay tuned and attend that webinar, because it's just such a large topic that I can't really answer it right now, but we will be having a webinar on it. What's the average time from the start of negotiation to execution of the contract by the parties using the process shown today? It depends, Alex. It depends on the size of the organization, and it depends on the culture within the organization. But these guys went from 3 months to 4 weeks in about 3 months from this being rolled out. So yeah, it was a significant difference, and that was just for the beginning. And then if you can roll this out and iterate and make it better, you can really make a difference. Cool. So I've spoken loads, and I'll just speak for a few more minutes before I let you go early. But I will now be talking about what we do at TLB and how we can help you supercharge your contract function. So if you saw all of that and you thought, that sounds great, or that sounds bonkers, I'm never going to be able to achieve that, we can help you. And there's also things that we can help within that whole process that we described that might just allow you to move a bit quicker on this. So for those of you who don't know, TLB is uniquely placed because there are 3 areas that we're really good at. And so that's legal. We have legal experts here that most of us are qualified solicitors, and we offer flexible legal support to our clients. We are trying to move away from the billable hour because we think that it is the root of all evil, to be honest with you. But up until now, it's been really difficult to get clients to accept different models. But I think after COVID, the world is changing and people are just more open to different commercial models. So we're now offering fixed price contract review on a subscription basis, which feels very much like a SaaS type arrangement. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, please let me know. We also have a really strong design practice within TLB, and that means that everything we do is underpinned by design thinking principles. And even when we're reviewing a contract, the principles that I talked about today, they're all steeped in design thinking. And basically the philosophy is that if you take a very user-centric approach to everything that you do and you focus on the needs of the other side, you will ultimately be a lot more effective. So we take documents, we take processes, we take legal matters, and we apply design thinking so that we can resolve those issues as quickly as possible and as best we can. And finally, we're ops and tech experts as well. So we take legal ops really seriously at TLB. We think that if you have great legal ops, you can absolutely put yourself at the heart of an organization and become that strategic business enabler, business growth enabler. So we know that by using really good operations and tech and focusing on the way that you work rather than just what you do is fundamental. And tech is for us the last piece, but also one that you need if you want to scale. So by applying these 3 areas to everything that we do, we are uniquely placed to solve problems and also to find innovative solutions to issues that you might have been facing. As I said, we do these 3 things. And if, for example, you wanted to work with us to really streamline your whole contract function, this is how we would do it. So we'd start off with a discovery session, which is a tailored discovery session to map out your processes and pain points. So if your pain point is my negotiations are taking ages, we can do that. We can look at your negotiation process in particular. If you're more interested in the broader contract function and how you can help streamline the whole thing, then we can do that as well. So depending on the issue that you're facing, we will hone into that. And we're not sort of cookie cutter. We just do this. We'll look at your specific problem and we'll really zone in and understand what it is and how to best solve it. Lots of people want to know how they benchmark against their peers. We can do that. We've worked with hundreds of companies up until now, and we kind of know where the industry sits and where you are operationally, so we can benchmark you. But we can also create a bespoke 12, 24, 36-month plan, however long you want the plan to be for. If you have, I don't know, budget for this long, or if you have specific objectives for this long. It doesn't mean that we have to work with you for that whole time, but we can give you this roadmap so that you can really optimize the way you work over a period of time, and you know where you're going with that. We can then help with the whole setup phase that I talked about earlier. So we can create your playbooks, we can update your templates, we can help you adopt one NDA because we know a lot about the barriers that people face. We've talked to hundreds of lawyers who were facing issues with just getting one NDA adopted, so we can help. And we can also put you in touch with other people in the one NDA community who might be able to help you get set up by giving you just their own stories. And then we can start the delivery. So if you want to work with us so that you can send us your contracts, for example, you can just start doing that. Or if you want us to start putting together your negotiation process, we will do that. So this is the delivery part. And then ultimately, if we continue to work with you, we'll always send you optimization reports to explain what the areas are of friction that we see. So we'll set ourselves up so that we're able to gather the data or get it from you so that we can give you our recommendations on an ongoing basis. And this is the team. The team's slightly changed now, but yeah, we have a few more people joining us, but this is us. And these are some of our clients' testimonials, and they very kindly allowed us to share those with you. Thank you. I've got another question here. but I'm just going to try and answer. Would the review of legal contracts also cover aspects of antitrust law? If you mean our review as TLB, yes, I mean, we can have a conversation about what it is that you need exactly, but effectively we work like an in-house team as an extension to your team, and we would build a playbook first. So we'd understand exactly what you need us to review, how you want us to review it, and then we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, Thomas, thanks for the introduction. And Taryn's asking if I have any in-person events coming up. We don't actually, but if that's something that you guys are interested in, please let me know. We'll be at Legal Geek and at Clock this year. So if you're going, please come and say hello. I'm really excited about it because I missed it last year because I had a tiny baby. But yeah, really looking forward to that this year. Okay. We finished 15 minutes early, so I will let everyone go and have a coffee before their next meeting. Thank you all so much for joining, and any feedback that you have, please let me know. Always really interested in learning how to make these better and more helpful. So drop me a line after this. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.